Hey guys, so we purchased a house less than 2 months ago, and as you can see, I am super excited to share all of the details with you. But what I thought would be interesting is that many of y'all, like me, are first generation immigrants in the UK and we are on work visas. So, in today's video, I will be breaking down the step by step process of how I purchased a house in the UK within 3 years of being here. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. But let's get into it. So here we are on my tidy desk. I have my laptop in front of me just to pull out a few pointers to explain the process to you. First things first, when me and my husband decided we wanted to buy a house, we first decided to start planning for it. Now, in order to plan for it, one of the first things you need is money. Now, to get some money, what we started doing is on a month-on-month basis, we started putting a small sum of money away into a bit of like a savings pot to start building up money. Now, just as a word of caution over here, a lot of you all know that in the UK, you will be offered various schemes to save up for your first home, such as a lifetime ISA. And again, if you would like a dedicated video about this, do let me know in the comments below so that I can make a detailed video about this and help you guys out further. But what we also did was started thinking about the kind of houses we want and the location. Now, as you all know, in terms of buying a house in the UK, the location plays one of the biggest barriers, because again, sometimes what tends to happen is the location that you want might be too expensive, and so you've got to compromise a bit. Luckily for us, the area we decided to buy a house in was somewhere we had already lived in, so we knew what the rental prices were looking like and what the purchase prices for the house would also look like. The other thing you've got to decide are on the different kinds of houses. So you have three different types of houses over here. You have terraced houses, semi-detached, and detached houses. So again, for us, we didn't mind exactly what kind of house it would bother, because for us personally, as far as we had good neighbors, we couldn't care less about it. But if you are somebody who wants to maybe have a bit more privacy, then you might want to go in for a semi-detached or a detached house. Again, like I said, the cost for these might be slightly higher than a terraced house. So again, this is something for you to think about in the process of buying a house right at this stage, which is the planning stage. The other thing we had to consider at the planning stage is what was the purchase price of the property. Now, the purchase price of the property is obviously one thing in itself, but why this was important for us is because there is something called stamp duty in the UK. Now, stamp duty is essentially a percentage price that you need to pay whenever you purchase a property of X amount. So for example, in the UK right now, you do not need to pay stamp duty if the purchase price of your property is less than £425,000. Now, this is again set to change from April 1st, and there will be a percentage that you need to pay if your house is above £300,000. But that being said, we didn't have to pay any stamp duty, but that was something we kept in mind while purchasing our first property, because we did not want to waste any money on stamp duty tax. Now, the second step that we used in our house buying journey was trying to get an agreement in principle. Now, for those of y'all who've done a bit of searching around, y'all would know that this is not the step that a lot of people choose to do. So I'm going to explain to you exactly why I did it at this stage and what were some of the reasons why we decided this was a good time to do it. So first, to understand what is agreement in principle. So agreement in principle is basically where a bank or a mortgage lender in the UK allows you or dictates exactly how much money you can borrow in order to purchase your property. Say, for example, if you are purchasing a property of maybe say £500,000, but you have an income of say a regular band 6 physio, which might be about £35,000, then most likely you are allowed to borrow up to 4.5 times your salary. And as you can imagine, that is nowhere near the £500,000 value. So in that case, your agreement to principle needs to reflect that, and that's why it might be much lesser. Now, what you've got to do at this stage is something that I personally chose to do is I bank with one of the major high street banks, which might be Lloyds or NatWest. And when I reached out to them, we had to just fill up a quick form and they gave us an agreement in principle based on their understanding of how much we could borrow. Now, why was this important and why is this something I recommend at this stage is because based on how much you can borrow and what is the deposit amount money you have already, you can start looking for properties. So it almost sets you a minimum and a maximum budget and what is the purchase value of the property you would be looking at. So that gives you again a good place to start looking for your property. Now, the next thing you do, and this is step number 3, and this is again something you want to do before you start viewing properties, is get yourself a mortgage advisor. Now, in terms of a mortgage advisor, I'm going to tell you why this is really important. A mortgage advisor is somebody who looks through all of the mortgages available in the UK and then will put forward a few mortgage options for you which they think might be the most suitable. Now, why this is important, especially for us as immigrants, is because as immigrants, as someone on a work visa, I was not allowed to apply for certain mortgages because I was not a British citizen or a British national. Now, that would be something that I did not know about in the process, but my mortgage advisor advised me about it, and obviously it told me that there were these and these banks that would offer you a mortgage based on your requirements. This is why a mortgage advisor is really important. And what I would say is please do not go to your local bank because they will offer you a mortgage potentially if the option is available, but their rates might be slightly higher. But what is easier and what I recommend is going to an independent mortgage advisor. The reason for that is because they have over 1,000 different mortgage options and they can pick and choose what is the most relevant for you based on your needs. Now, again, if you are looking for a mortgage advisor, I cannot recommend enough of Mortgage Advice Bureau. They were the mortgage advisors I chose, especially because they were recommended to me by my ISA provider. And they did an absolutely fantastic job with my mortgage and getting it sorted out for me. So like I said, if you would like to contact them, I'll leave the details for them in the description below. And if you are reaching out to them, you could please do me a big favor and say you were referred by Nikita de Cruz, because then that will just add up as a bit of a referral scheme for me. You are not going to be charged extra, but I might get a little bit of a commission out of that. And again, I'm going to be completely transparent about it. But this is not a paid promotion for them in any way. They have not paid me to take their name in this particular video. So once you've chosen the mortgage advisor, the next step that you want to do is step number 4. View your property. Now, again, when you go to view the property, what is super helpful is deciding the area that you want to look at, deciding what is the purchase price, what is the minimum and the maximum budget you're looking at, but also just thinking about whether you want to purchase a new build or an old home. Now, again, many of you all out there would be confused about what is a new build and what is a old home and which one should you be preferring. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding, a new build is something or a house that has been built recently, so it has not been lived in, whereas an old home is some place that has obviously been on the market and has been around for a couple of years, has had people living in them. They both seem to have their advantages and disadvantages, and I'm going to be upfront with you. We did not look at new builds at all, which is very different as compared to a lot of advice that we receive. So again, if you do have questions about it, do leave them in the comments below so that I can probably create a more detailed video about why we chose to buy an old house versus a new build. Once you've identified where is it that you want to live and where is the property that you would like to purchase, what you've then got to do is go back to the estate agents and say, yes, this is the property I'd like to purchase. This is my offer value. So they will then take that offer value and go back to the sort of owner of the place. And again, they need to mutually agree on whether this offer value is acceptable to them. If not, you might go into a bit of a bidding war to see what is the highest value they can sort of do. But what is also important at this stage is that you have your deposit sorted out. Now, again, in terms of mortgages, I think this is really important to explain it at this stage, is when you buy a property in the UK, you need to put down a certain deposit and then the rest of the amount can be taken as a mortgage. Now, in terms of deposits, as an immigrant, you can have several options opened up to you. You can pay 5% deposit, you can pay 10% deposit. We chose to pay 10% deposit just because of a certain concept known as mortgage loan to value. So the loan to value, or the LTV, is basically if you were deciding to pay about a 5% deposit, then you would take a mortgage out for the 95% value, which is not a bad thing. But what tends to happen is, from the bank's point of view, you are then at a higher risk of not paying off the mortgage, versus if you were to put down a 10% deposit, then you would be having a bit more buy-in into the property, and so the risk from the bank's point of view goes down, and that's how they will then reduce the interest rates that they are charging you. But yes, if you put down a 10% deposit on your house, which is what we did, it's generally considered a good thing in the UK, and that is what I would advise you all to do. Please do not overstretch yourself and take a bigger mortgage just because you are allowed to, or your mortgage advisor says that that is an option that's available to you. Consider all of the sort of options out there, and if possible, put down a bigger deposit just so that your mortgage rates can be slightly lesser. And trust me guys, that makes a huge difference in the monthly payments or installments that you will be paying back to the bank. Another thing worth mentioning about mortgages at this point is mortgage product fees. So some mortgages in the UK, and this is again something that your mortgage advisor should tell you about, but I'm just highlighting the fact over here, is that some mortgages in the UK have a certain fee that is associated with it. It can be about £500, it can be £999, it can be anything. But it is worth knowing about it before you decide to opt in for that particular mortgage deal with the mortgage broker or with the lender. So please be aware about these mortgage fees before you make a decision. But now, considering the fact that you've liked the place, the seller has agreed to the price that you've offered, everything is decided, that is just where your process starts. Because what you've got to do after that is find yourself a solicitor. Because once the solicitor that you have reaches out to the seller's solicitors and they've essentially shook hands on the internet, that's when your property or the property you're interested in goes off the market from the estate agent side. Now again, this is super crucial to remember, because just because you've put in an offer and the seller has accepted it does not mean that the property is off the market. Your solicitors need to make contact with the seller solicitors to ensure that the property is off the market and is not being shown to any other potential buyers. Not emphasize how important it is to choose a good solicitor. I am going to be honest, we did not have great solicitors and the process was an entire nightmare. We were calling them up every 2 times a week to try and chase them up, see what they are doing, get updates, and we were not getting anywhere. I personally think our entire house buying journey was put longer due to the solicitors' lack of competency generally in the process, and there was no way to complain against them, which was even more infuriating because we were personally not very happy with the service we were provided. But yeah, once you've sorted out your solicitor, another important thing for us was, because we were buying a property which was essentially an old build or an older house, we also wanted to go ahead with a survey. Now again, in terms of surveys, there can be different levels of surveys, level 1, level 2, level 3, based on what you need. And again, if you want to know more about it, do let me know in the comments, because I will try to make a more detailed video about it at a later stage. But yes, that is something to consider. Now, if you are going in for a new build, you do not essentially need a survey. But right, if you are going for an older house, again, it is optional. We chose to do it. I'm not saying that it is a mandatory requirement in the UK. So again, completely optional, and it's up to you guys to decide whether you want to do it or no. Your solicitors have made contact and all of that process is going on. What you will have to do is submit loads and loads of different documents. This includes your pay slips, bank statements, visa documents, etc. There is an entire list of them that your solicitor should give you. Go ahead and submit all of them so that they can start the processing on their end. But on your end, what you've also got to do is just speak to your mortgage advisor, because they are going to have to secure the mortgage for you at this point. What this means is there is going to be a deep scrutiny of your bank accounts. They are going to need bank statements. They are going to need to know if the money you are paying as a part of your deposit is coming from your lifetime ISA, or are your parents or a relative gifting that money to you. They are going to want to check your credit score. They are going to want to look into your finances and deep dive into anything related to money laundering, basically. So once all of the solicitors' work is done and the mortgage lender's work is done, what is then going to happen is you are going to reach a point where you need to check all of the property documents. Now, this is a really important stage, and make sure you do not skip any fine print in the process at this stage, because this is the property that you will be purchasing, that you are responsible for. So you don't want to have any demons hanging on your head at this point. So make sure you read all of the document papers and the property papers at this stage. Once you are happy with it, you can go back to your solicitor and say you're happy with it, and you can move ahead with the property purchase. And at this point, what they are going to do is set something up known as the exchange of contracts date. Now, to explain a bit further, the exchange of contracts is basically a day where the seller solicitor will send over the property purchase contract to your solicitors, and they will ask you if you're happy with it, have a read, give it a sign, and then they will just send it back to the seller solicitors. A lot of people tend to have the exchange of contracts on the same day as the completion day, and the completion day is basically where the estate agent hands you the key and says, right, this is your property, go live in peace. But I would advise you not to have it on the same day, just because if you are in a chain, and like us, we were right at the bottom of the chain in our chain, which is essentially the house buying process in the UK. If the exchange of contracts is left for the last person at maybe say the end of the day, then that is a lot of added stress to you, because if that exchange has not occurred, and if you are meant to be moving in on the completion day, which is the same day, then you're just very stressed by the end of the day. And I personally think it is not worth taking all of that additional stress. So what I would say is maybe try and do the exchange of contracts 2 to 3 days or maybe a week in advance, so that you're sure all of the paperwork is done and ready for completion, which is essentially the day that you will receive your keys. And when you've completed your exchange of contracts and have reached the completion day, what happens on that day is your mortgage advisor would have already got the mortgage deal sorted, and all of the funds are now with your solicitor. So the seller's solicitor is just going to have a ring and say, right, we are ready to transfer the funds and receive all of it. And your solicitor is going to transfer all of the funds to the seller's solicitor. At that point, the seller solicitor will transfer all of the funds to the seller, and once he or she is happy about it, they will then say, right, we're happy, we've received all of the funds, go ahead. And that go ahead is then received by your estate agent, who then says, right, we are happy, you can come and take your keys now. And that's when you receive the keys to your new home, which is an amazing feeling. That being said, though, I do want to say that the house buying process in the UK is very tedious, which I hope you've understood by the entire process that I've explained so far. And for us, it took about 6 to 7 months from the time we viewed the property all the way to completion. So it is not quick. It is not what we would expect back home in India. So please do not be worried or stressed about it. However, there are some proper horror stories for people who have had bad experiences in the past. I'm happy to share them through a YouTube video if you would like to know more. But again, feel free to leave any questions or comments in the description below, and do let me know. Take care, guys. Bye.